Hello everyone, I'm Kathi Powers, Superintendent with the Twinsburg City School District. Welcome to Twinsburg Schools Today. Today we have a pretty serious conversation to have with you, and I'm delighted that our new Director of Student Wellness, Dr. Andrea Walker, is here. Welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And to just put some context to the conversation and the reason why student wellness and social emotional learning is so important, I just want to share with our audience a couple of statistics that are relatively new. This is from April of 2019 from the Centers for Disease Control. And this talks about children and mental health, and 77.1% of children aged 3 to 17, that's approximately 4.4 million children in the nation, are diagnosed with anxiety. Wow. 3.2% of children ages 3 to 17, that's approximately 1.9 million children, have been diagnosed with depression. And 1 in 6 United States children aged 2 to 8 have a diagnosis of mental, behavioral, or developmental disorders. And those numbers just are amazing to me.
Right, they're quite staggering.
It's staggering. And so in the world that we live in, with so much stress and anxiety, especially being felt by young children and youth, I'm so delighted that you are joining our staff as our newest director for the Twinsburg City School District in the area of student wellness. Welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So you've only been with us probably a month or so,
right,
and have been fast to work. But before we talk about the work of your office, let's talk a little bit about you, Dr. Walker. Tell our residents and our viewers a little bit about your experiences and ultimately what has led you to the Twinsburg City School District.
Okay. Well, I guess first I should say I started as a Twinsburg Tiger many moons ago. I graduated from Chamberlain High School at the time. But Twinsburg High School did not exist, but I am a 96 graduate, a very proud graduate, and I went away to school, completed my undergraduate and graduate studies at Kent State, and then pursued my doctorate a little later in life, but I received that in Tennessee. And so there was an opening that came about recently, and when I saw it, I said, let me see if I can do something with this. It means a lot. My professional career has led me. I was a teacher, a 6th grade teacher for many years, and then I was an assistant principal and a principal. So I've dealt with children ever since I basically got out of college and moved my way up through the ranks. So when I was able to apply for this position, it resonates with me often because in our world, teaching and learning, that's our thing, but there are many barriers. And one of the things that has come to the top are the things that are dealing with mental health or social emotional learning, as you demonstrated with your statistics. And so it meant a lot to me to be able to help get rid of some of those barriers so the things that like our main job, teaching and learning, can take place.
Right, and students can't possibly learn and succeed in life if they're not feeling good about themselves.
Exactly.
The State Department of Education recently released the social emotional learning standards, and as a school district in Twinsburg, as well as all the school districts in the state, we're trying to figure out how do you incorporate those standards into what we do every day.
Right.
So can you share with our viewers a little bit about the social emotional learning standards, and particularly the 5 competencies that encompass the standards as a total package?
Okay, so there are 5 competencies, as you stated, and those standards run from pre-K all the way up to grade 12. So there's 2 standards that begin with the self. So there's self-awareness, meaning that you become aware of your feelings, that you can identify those feelings, and then there's self-management, simply meaning how do you respond when you are faced with certain adversity, or if you have good emotions, bad emotions. But first of all, recognizing emotions. 2, how do you respond? How do you manage yourself? And then there's social awareness. Social awareness is huge. It just basically is empathy. How can you empathize or sympathize with the people that are around you? And in this world of social media and seeing different things that we see on TV, this is the one that I feel is most important, because I think somewhere along the way we need to empathize or sympathize better with other people.
Right.
Who are different from us, or maybe even the same.
So many things are said on social media that are so surprising. I don't think folks would have that conversation with you face to face.
And I put a little. I believe social media has really good strengths, but part of the problem is that the face-to-face interaction and having super powers behind the screen, but when you're face-to-face, typically there's a human aspect that you would consider more so. And so the other two things are relational skills. How do you relate to a person? And then responsible decision making, making responsible choices and understanding the consequences of your choices and how that all plays a part in living someone's best life, essentially.
So it's really helping to round out a child.
Yes, it's all about the whole child, essentially. Right. As I stated before, teaching and learning that's our main focus. But I think lawmakers have noticed when children are graduating high school that the whole child has to be addressed. I mean, if you see any, often if you've had children that we've had in the district and my former students, if you see them in life, sometimes you see those that are right on the right path and some you see that aren't on the right path. And I think what lawmakers were noticing is that we're seeing those things in the K-12 realm. How can we make them whole so when they get out into society, they can become their best self? They can be sustainable and members and productive members of society.
And that's what it needs to be about.
All about, yes, because I mean, they're our future. They're taking care of me at some point.
Right.
At some point, yes.
Right. So in our school district, we have started the work of unpacking these new standards.
Yes.
And trying to understand how they fit, because how the standards may work operationally in instruction in preschool or kindergarten will look significantly different maybe than what happens up at the high school. Can you address that a little bit?
Yes, so the biggest thing for me and a part of my work is really customizing the standards to the Twinsburg City School District. So what is happening in our neighboring communities is important. However, it's not what's happening exactly here. So when kids are at the preschool level, and we have a preschool, but really the kindergarten level all the way up to their senior year, they're all looking at the same standards. But for instance, a child at the preschool level may just have to identify. Can you identify the basic emotions like anger? Can you identify happiness? Can you identify joy? Things like that. When they get older, it's more or less identifying those things, but also being able to articulate that you feel a particular way and doing that appropriately. So it's just a continuum, and where it's woven in and out of the classroom. And what will essentially happen is that our teachers will learn the strategies to teach this in a way that doesn't take away from teaching, but almost like it's a part of the background. We're just going to teach about these things and have common language so that our kids understand and become whole. We want them to become whole because if you've ever had a child lay on the floor and kick and scream, what they want at that moment is to be taken care of emotionally. And it's just like any child that may come into our doors that may feel maybe they had a bad night, maybe they had a rough morning. If they're not emotionally safe, math, reading, writing, none of those things are important, and our teachers are recognizing that. We're recognizing that.
Right.
And so I bring up that example to state, if you have a kid that's having, not necessarily, but think about it, if you have a child that's having a tantrum, until they're emotionally okay, they can't do anything else.
They're stuck in time,
They're stuck.
really.
They really are. And so what we're trying to do is make sure that all of our kids, when they walk into the door, no matter what has happened, because we can't control outside circumstances, but within our school family, we're trying to make sure that they are okay so that our first order of business can continue.
So our district strategic plan, which was recently authorized by the Twinsburg Board of Education, and recently also each of the schools' continuous improvement plans and the district's continuous improvement plans, they all have a goal that is relative to social emotional learning and student development.
Yes.
And part of the early on of this goal is identifying a curriculum that will work in this continuum. Where are you in that work? It's such an important job to do, and you can't do it by yourself, obviously.
No. We're in the exploratory phases, the exploratory and research phases. Again, when I stated before, I do not want this to be a plop and drop where someone has a customized program and it's just dropped down in here. It really needs to make sense that it fits with where we are and where we intend to go, because our strategic plan is for 5 years, and we're not seated in 2019. We're also looking to 2024. So we're making sure we're bridging that gap. And I have been talking with a lot of people. I've had a lot of meetings, and there are a lot of interesting programs out here. But because social emotional learning is a buzzword, I want to make sure we have a program that is research-based, evidence-based, that it has a good return on the dollar, because when you begin to put money into social emotional learning, the benefits are that we will receive, that kids will have a longer, more productive life. And it also talks about the academics, how usually for every $11 spent, we usually see that much more come back for our test scores. And although I don't believe one test score makes up an entire child, it is important in our work that we have accountability to the state. Right. So it really demonstrates the whole child. And how we're going to look at those things and make sure that what we're putting in Twinsburg City Schools will match where we are and where we need to go.
It's really true what you're saying. We are getting so many emails and correspondence about all these programs and the best thing since sliced bread, basically. But you have to adopt something or recommend the adoption of something that is going to fit our students in our community.
Right, and that it's not a fly-by-night program. We want to do our due diligence to our community. And that they understand that being fiscally responsible and sound is that we're making sure that if we are going to put money into a program, that it's something that's going to give us a great return in the end.
Right. You know, we as a school district have, for the last year and a half, been doing book studies on trauma and being trauma sensitive and having trauma sensitive schools. And trauma is one of those things that initially, when I thought about trauma, you think about something like a car accident, right?
Yes.
But what we have known now from research, trauma goes far beyond that. Can you explain or define trauma?
So trauma is any event in a child's life or a person's life that to break it down and maybe put it in layman's terms, it will stop you in time, for lack of a better word. And then after that, that person is adapting to their new normal. And sometimes what that looks like is maladaptive behaviors, and that changes the function of the brain. So what ends up happening is that children are coming to us with different things. Some things, trauma can be, I don't want to consider this a small thing, but divorce can be trauma. Sure. Death of a family member can be trauma. Like you said, a car accident can be trauma. It can range from something that that someone may not put in the classification of trauma to something where we're like, oh my goodness, yeah, that's definitely trauma. But the range of emotions that a child may exhibit are also that wide. And so with us studying trauma-informed care and really having our teachers learn how to be responsive, it's just that we're learning to look at and to define when a child is in a moment when he or she might not be able to adjust in a moment, and then that teacher, that adult, being able to respond to that particular need. And then also focusing on the adults, right? The one thing that we cannot forget about is that as humans, you and I, we're human. We have emotions, we have abilities, capabilities, and sometimes if we do not take care of ourselves, we cannot give from an empty cup. And so another part of my work is really working with the staff as well and making sure that we are responding to their needs as staff so that they can continue to do good things for our kids.
And that is so important. Mm-hmm. I think anyone who works for our school district really has the great intention of supporting the children that we have in our care. Right. But much like you just said, adults that work for us are coming sometimes to work having trauma in their life. Exactly. And helping the adults that work with the school district to manage that is so important, because like you said, you can't serve others if your cup is not full. Exactly. And so I think that is great. And the book studies that we have done really are starting to provide our staff members with some good reminders too. Absolutely. Great tools to work with children, but reminders about their own self-care.
It's very self-reflective.
Right.
It makes you think, okay, and take a moment to pause. It's okay. It's okay.
And breathe.
And breathe, right.
Yeah, a lot of research talks about the benefits of deep breathing, and it sort of helps reset or recalibrate yourself. Right.
Right, and giving us strategies, because we're the best modelers. I mean, we can model the behavior that our students need to see. And it's awesome when we can see ourselves in a moment. We have emotions, and if we're upset or if we're not feeling the best, if we can say, you know what, Dr. Walker needs a moment to breathe. Whole class does it with you, then they understand if my teacher is doing this, it's okay that I can do this too. And once you begin modeling that behavior, then it becomes a part of the landscape of the school, so it's integrated.
Right. It's changing the culture.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So for many years, we have had a positive behavior intervention supports PBIS initiative in the district, and it talks about positive environments, positive learning environments, helping students make good choices so that the environment is much more proactive. And so fast forward now, we have PBIS in place. Now we have social emotional learning and the new standards talking about student development. How do those two areas merge?
So social emotional learning is more or less the development of. And the PBIS portion, the positive behavior intervention supports, for those who may not know our alphabet soup, that is more or less rewarding the behavior so that they become common practice. So when you're teaching a child something, that's more that social emotional learning. We're teaching, we're developing all of that nitty-gritty work to make sure that they understand, identify all of those things. But then when a child begins to display the behaviors that are appropriate, then we begin to recognize and reinforce those behaviors. And then we don't reinforce the negative, but we try to say, okay, instead of doing this, perhaps we can do that. And then once those behaviors become commonplace, then the shift goes right back to we identify again, good, we teach, and then we go back to reinforcement. So they work in tandem. Although I guess they could be separate, the standards are here, and they are something that eventually we will have to determine our own assessment as to how well we are progressing towards those standards. Right now, the state doesn't have a particular assessment, and that's okay. I'm okay with that.
Me too.
However, PBIS has a lot of positive strengths, and I don't want to take away from that, because I think teaching and reinforcing, those are the two best things in order to get a school to be a welcoming place and have that encouragement that children need to come back in those doors every day.
Right.
Yes.
So professional development has been ongoing for a couple of years now, talking about trauma and trauma-sensitive schools. This year, we're beginning the conversation about social-emotional learning and doing work not only to provide our staff with the tools to support children, but also some reminders for themselves. So what other things are you working on with regard to our staff members in this arena?
So one of the things that I have done is I like to talk to all staff members, and I think it's important for the audience who is watching this at this time to know that when I'm talking about all staff, I mean all staff. Right. So particularly that word staff may just be ascribed to a teacher, but that's our principals, that's our administrative assistants, secretaries, our custodial staff, our bus drivers, our food service staff. Because every component, if I were to take any one of those staff members away from me, something is not going to work right in that day.
Exactly.
If I didn't have a bus driver picking up a student, I don't have students to walk into the building. If I don't have a food service staff member to help serve and feed the students, then I have hungry bellies, and hungry bellies are not good things. And so I am intentional about talking to everyone and seeing where their voice can help me develop and create what is perfect for Twinsburg and the areas that they feel they need strengthened. I've had conversations already with the principals. I've had conversations with our classified staff, and I've had some conversations with our certified staff, but I would like to have more. But those conversations have to be done building by building, because things are more appropriate for instance, Wilcox, that may not be appropriate at the high school, and there so on. So what I'm doing is having those intimate meetings and figuring out what they would like to see, what they are seeing, because every age group offers a different stroke.
Right.
And I'm also doing resource mapping in the district, and resource mapping is it doesn't take away from anything that we've been doing. It just basically looks at all of the options that we have available to kids. And then it identifies what we're doing well and then areas that we have gaps. Because when you look at the whole child, we also have to consider early literacy and what children do immediately leaving Twinsburg City School District when they graduate. So it makes sense for us to pay attention to what our preschools are doing, not just the one that's in our district, but other early literacy options for early learning. And then when our kids leave here, the whole purpose of going through 13 years of schooling is that you become productive.
Right.
And we want to make sure that we're collaborating with those agencies outside, immediately when they leave our doors. We can't stick with them forever, but making sure that we have a temperature on that, because we need to make sure what we're doing in the 13 years we have them, that they're successful. And then before they get to us, what are those things that we need to know so that we can start the ground going when they come through our doors.
Right. The community partners are so important.
They are hugely important.
Right. Absolutely.
Hugely important.
So with regard to our families,
yes,
this whole effort with regard to social emotional learning is so personal. And as you mentioned earlier, when children come to our schools on any given day, come through the front doors, some have come with some trauma, and some have come ready to learn. So we have all kinds of things going on. And some of our families really are working their way through traumatic situations.
Absolutely.
So what kind of advice can you offer to our residents who may either be having a traumatic situation in their family or maybe with a child, and how can we as a district support them in their journey?
So in my experience, I've noticed that anything, especially dealing with mental health, trauma, anything that may be classified as embarrassing, that may happen to a family that significantly impacts a child or the family, that becomes a very private, protected issue. And so we recognize that. We in our district, we are not going to take any information that we receive and manipulate it or spread it abroad. We're actually not allowed to. However, I would tell parents, the advice I would give them is to make sure that they're recognizing the signs of what has happened, and recognize that your child or children may have been impacted. You, as the caregiver, may have been impacted, and it is important to begin some journey of self-care so that healing can begin. For a child, it is important to let the schools know as much as you feel comfortable, even if it's just, I just want you to know an incident took place and my child might behave this way, or might be sleepy, or just so we can also have a temperature on it. And once we understand and we know and we gain that relationship with the family, then they can begin to trust us, and we can begin to recommend the resources that are available in-house, because we have many resources that are available in-house, but most parents don't stumble upon those until they need them.
Right.
And we have many resources.
And even at the high school last year during our action team work as the strategic plan was being developed, we had some of our high school students that were sitting members of the Culture Climate Committee.
Yes.
And we were talking about some of the options that we have throughout the district, but particularly at Twinsburg High School. And these students said, we didn't know those options are there.
Right.
So to your point, we have many things that we can offer.
Right.
Our parents and our students just may not know about them
Right.
because they haven't had the need to know about them.
Absolutely, and that's fair. That's fair. But I want our families to know that we do have options, and we have a lot of options. And as my job develops, I want to make sure that the continuum of care is there for appropriate for each grade level, but also we might need the continuum of care through different schools, especially if multiple children are impacted, and or parents and grandparents, because
Right.
That's usually a pretty tight-knit part of the family. So I would just tell parents to please just make us aware as much as you feel comfortable letting us know, even if it's just to tell us something happened, even if you're not comfortable, because it's important that the school has some knowledge,
Right.
and that we will protect that information, and then from there continue to grow, and let us figure out how we can help you. Once we know the information, then we can say, hey, we have this available, that available. Have you considered these options?
And two children that come to us from different families who may have encountered similar trauma may not demonstrate the same behavior.
Not at all.
And so that communication and the partnership with the staff is so important because with that information, like you just mentioned, our teachers, our administrators, our classified staff members are able to figure it out, put some pieces together, connect families with services. You know, we have our Beachbrook social workers on staff that just do such a great job, great community partners, and their resources far extend those of the school district.
Absolutely.
So we're very grateful for that partnership too. But again, it's about the trust, and as you mentioned, some of these situations are very private.
Yes.
And so, you know, we pledge that when private things are shared, that they remain private and only need to be shared because we want to help.
Absolutely. And another piece of that puzzle is knowing that you're not alone. I think sometimes the school can feel like a place where, you know, my kid is to be educated, but we're with children a good chunk of the day. And if they're not doing well for whatever reason, we need to know that information. And I would invite parents to speak with our counselor, speak with the principal, speak with someone, and that person knows who to direct that information to.
Right. Well, I am so grateful that you are a member of our staff now.
Yes, I am too.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
It's
Welcome
been a
home.
fast month, right? Welcome
Yes.
home for sure. And, you know, if a parent has a question or concern, your office is at the Board of Education
It
office.
is, yes.
And you can be reached via email as well.
Absolutely, yes. I'm available, so
Absolutely.
here to
Well,
talk and help.
I think this whole new office and the work that you're engaging in and the collaborative efforts can only be great benefits for the students that we serve and their families.
Yes, absolutely. I'm ready to get to work.
It's wonderful.
All
Thanks
right.
again for
Thank
being
you.
here.
Thank you so much.
Well, thanks for tuning in today to Twinsburg Schools Today. We have so many great programs that support our students, but we want to thank you for supporting our school district because the work of our staff is so important in helping our children achieve their greatest potential. We welcome you to so many of our events. Please take a look at our district website where all of the latest calendar of events can be found, and we certainly hope to see you soon at one of those many events where we're supporting our kids in so many ways in the Twinsburg City School District. Have a great day, everyone.